Hi guys, my name is Elsie,
My name is JT.
and welcome to the F1 Debate Show. In this episode, we're going to talk about some of the massive stories in the paddock from this week, including Maldonado maybe returning back to Formula One, or everyone gets worried about that. The Autosoft tyres being confirmed for Singapore and some other races in the 2016 calendar. The Halo cockpit for 2017, is that going to happen? But the main story, and what I'm going to kick off this episode with, is the Jules Bianchi law case. Now, obviously, as some of you will know, is that Jules Bianchi, the French Formula 1 driver from Russia, sadly passed away in July 2015 following his crash at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka. And this was a massive loss for everyone involved, us as Formula 1 fans, the Formula 1, the FIA, and obviously the family of Jules Bianchi. It would have shocked everyone in France, everyone who knew Jules, and it was just a terrible thing to see. Now it's been 20 months since the tragedy happened, since the crash, and this hasn't never really come about because we all thought that the family would never get over this. Obviously, this is a great loss for them, and they will never forget Jules, like we will never forget Jules. But now, well, it was confirmed around the middle of the Monaco Grand Prix that the family of Jules Bianchi have contacted a law firm in the United Kingdom called Stewart's Law. And they are seeking legal advice, and they're now taking legal prosecution towards some parties that were involved in the Jules Bianchi incident. These include the FIA, the FOM, the Japanese Motor Authority that supply the stewards and obviously the track maintenance around Suzuka, and most surprisingly, Marussia and the ex-CEO of Marussia, Graham Loudon. So all these parties are being involved in the legal case because the ultimate goal is to get answers that haven't been answered from the aftermath of what's happened. Now, what they're trying to find is at the moment is that they're trying to prove, was Jules' death, could it have been avoided? Because I was going to say, that was a question that we've never really asked ourselves. The FIA have never asked themselves, Formula One have never asked, could Jules' death be avoided? Now, obviously, there's people saying that, if the recovery vehicle, obviously, that came on to remove Adrian's car, if that was in a different place, stuff like that, yes, it would have. But it's never really been looked into. And now, as I say, when you think back of what actually happened between, say, October and July, obviously aftermath when Jules was in his coma, and then obviously after he passed away, that's never been answered. So now the family wants answers that haven't been answered before. They just want the truth of what actually happened, and they want to find out, who was to blame. Now, if you think about it, really, if you think about it, like deeply, it's that when this crash actually happened, no one really took the blame. Obviously, Jules' death was an accident. It was a racing incident, maybe a bit more than a racing incident, but no one was really to blame. But at the end of the day, though, someone maybe should have stood up and said, this is our fault. We feel responsible. We take responsibility for Jules' death. JT, do you believe this? Do you think that someone, like, say, the safety around Formula One should have taken more of the blame for Jules' death instead of just leaving it, as an incident?
Well, somebody should have stood up and said that, look, I'm part responsible for Jules' death, because immediately straight away the FIA blamed Jules Bianchi for going too fast in the yellow flag zone, which obviously his dad Felipe Bianchi obviously went absolutely mental about, because it was like, well, you're trying to hide the fact that this is your fault. You could have prevented this. You could have stopped the race, and trying to hide, keep it hush about the FIA, trying to keep it behind closed doors about what actually happened and stuff. But in terms of it being avoided, it is a hard one to call, if I'm honest with you, because there's many ways it could have been avoided. There's many ways, obviously, that Jules couldn't have, would have just drove past the recovery truck, no problem at all, because they did red flag the race. It started behind the safety car at certain points. But what I've been saying for many weeks, for many months rather, that Jules Bianchi could have aquaplaned absolutely anywhere in the circuit, like literally anywhere. But he aquaplaned at that point, and he went literally as the crow flies into the back of the recovery truck. Unfortunately, the recovery truck was reversing. If it hadn't been reversing, then Jules would have hit the barrier, would have walked out, back to the paddock. Yeah. And it is a hard one to talk about, because there's many different reasons that you could say. Like, you could say, yes, Charlie Whiting could have, red flagged the race for a bit to let it calm down. He could have cancelled the race. But obviously, I mean, that was never going to happen because of sponsorships and money and stuff, which is wrong. But that's the way that's the way Formula One is right now. So that's the way it goes. But if you look back to some previous reigning races, I mean, for example, Malaysia 2009, where it was absolutely chucking it down, it was torrential, it was horrific. And they cancelled the race halfway through, and they gave everybody half points, I believe, or everyone who scored points, half. So they could have easily done that. They didn't. Maybe because it wasn't as bad, but I mean, you could have never ever predicted what was about to happen.
Yeah.
Like literally, as I said, if somebody tried to do a reconstruction of Jules Bianchi's crash for an investigation, you couldn't do it. I mean, Delhi saves you generally could not do it. But also, obviously, I understand that Jules Bianchi's family is going to sue other people. I mean, especially the FIA, FOM, and people like that. But obviously, as like Elsie said, the surprising one is Marussia. Now, I'm really surprised here because I'm going, how could a Marussia prevent Jules Bianchi, crashing? Because
now with Marussia, I mean, they're as you've seen, JT, it's surprising. They're probably the last people to do because, as you know, obviously, Marussia as a team are employed by Formula One, the entertainment, well, sports / entertainment, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, that's another ongoing topic is Formula One sport or entertainment. So Marussia are employed by Formula One, and obviously the FIA who employ Formula One. There's a lot of employments going on. We're going down the line. You think of at work. You have a manager, then an assistant manager, then all the way down, and you'll get to say, the duty managers, the operation managers, depending obviously where you work. That's what it is. Obviously, you've got the FIA at the top. They're the top dogs. Then you've got Formula One as the business, then you've got the teams, and then you've got the drivers. So Marussia is a very strange one because whatever the decision was for the race, they'd have had to just play ball with whatever was happening. Now, JT, you mentioned one thing which, I mean, obviously everyone would... It's kind of ridiculous, this, is that obviously they were saying that Jules is going too fast. Now, if this was the case, then... I mean, if he wasn't going too fast, if he wasn't going fast, then he wouldn't have been in Formula One, and that's the same for every single Formula One driver. They are employed for one reason and one reason only, because they're fast in a car. They have the nerve, they have the balls to go as fast and flat out in these cars as they possibly can. And every single driver, any single driver, past or present, would have gone round that corner as fast as they could, even in the torrential rain. I mean, they would have. Yeah, I say, they would have gone flat out, and this was nothing to do with this. I mean, Adrian Sutil span out. Obviously, you had people like Marcus Ericsson spinning out. I can't remember the other ones. Obviously, I say Adrian spinning off at the exact corner. So, you have obviously a Sauber driver with more skill than Jules. Well, more experience than Jules, going off and spinning, and obviously no one really blamed him. Anyway, sorry, I don't mean that they don't blame him, but obviously that's not really the reason that he was going too fast. That's just them trying to dismiss it, which is very strange because we never thought that the FIA would do something like this, would dismiss it as soon as possible. Now, what the outcome of this is that they want, obviously, it's a closure and justice in a way that Jules Bianchi's family want to know. It's almost like, two reasons. One, why did the race go ahead, and why was Jules put in this dangerous situation when, to your understanding, it was more than a reasonable doubt that there would have been danger in this race. Okay, you had the typhoon in Japan. Obviously, the tyres, to my understanding, he was on, was it full wets, JT?
Yeah, everyone was on full wets. Yeah,
but even then, even the full wets.
No, he wasn't. It was on intermediate.
Yes, of course. Sorry.
It was on intermediate. Sorry, because I remember the image of the crash, and you can see it's both tyres underneath the recovery truck. It wasn't intermediate. Yeah.
I was thinking that, but anyway, even the full wet wouldn't have had enough grip to sustain that. And obviously it was getting darker. So obviously in terms of light was getting low. There was a lot of reasons why this race shouldn't have gone ahead, and that's what they're trying to prove. Could this have been avoided? And if so, why wasn't it? I never thought of this because, as I say, it's never raised its head. And it's almost surprising in a way. You've had 20 months, we've had a death of a driver in this generation. Obviously, the first since Ayrton Senna in 1994. 20 years. Obviously, 20 years since 21 since Jules passed away, and then obviously 20 since the accident. And it should have been avoided. Obviously, sorry, I mean, if it could have been avoided, it would have been avoided, but it wasn't. So they're trying to prove it should have been. Now, the thing that a lot of people are confused out there, they're thinking that the family's after money. Now, they're not. The word suing Now, obviously, I do law at university. I know a lot of people, maybe don't know much about it, but the suing is just kind of like the universal word that we use to say that they're seeking kind of, they're forward going against those parties. It doesn't mean that the family are after money, because they're not. I mean, no money in the world would bring Jules back, so it's pointless them having it. What would they do with money? What would they do with FIA money? What would they do with money from Russia, who, by the way, aren't even... Well, Russia aren't a team anymore, it's Mana. And obviously, I mean, I don't want to go into detail about this. They don't want the money. They don't want anything. They don't want fame. All they want is answers about Jules. Could this have been avoided? And if so, why wasn't it? They want to talk about the FIA. They want to talk the FOM, which is the head safety organisation in Formula One, who, by the way, have been on the topic since Jules' death about improving Formula One. Now, this will lead on to something that JT is going to move on to in a bit, about Halo Cockpit. But this has taken, I think it's been about, say, 16 months after Jules' accident. And why did it take that to discuss like safety improvements? Obviously you've had loads and loads and loads of injuries. You had Felipe Massa's head injury. You had some unbelievable crashes, even in different formulas as well. As a few weeks ago we saw the crash in, I believe it was Formula 3 at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, where the car was almost not in about in 3 billion pieces when it came down to earth. So why is it taken after the crash to look into safety? And obviously this will take some time, and the FIA haven't come public with what they want to say. So we'll know a lot. We'll know at least some more about this situation after the Canadian Grand Prix, because the FIA will have to face the media, and that will be some of the questions that will be answered. That'll be asked. Might not be answered at that point. But it depends what they're going to say. Now, JT, I think this case is very similar to the Hillsborough incident in 1989 in the United Kingdom. Now, obviously, in this incident, if people don't know about it, obviously, please read about it, look it up. It's very fascinating and obviously very upsetting as well. Now, these people, obviously, the incident that obviously killed 96 Liverpool fans in 1989, it took 27 years, and within that time, they were fighting against the South Yorkshire Police to get justice and to prove that the fans were unlawfully killed. And that's what they're trying to prove, that by causing a dangerous situation, whatever party was involved, was it the Japanese authority of motorsport that obviously had the marshals in Suzuka? Were they not trained? Were they not adequately trained to get Jules out of the car, to prevent this crash? Anything, they're going to examine everything, but that's what they want. They want justice, and they want to find out who is responsible for this. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about this is something that I said before, which it kind of angers you to think that no one, and I said this to JT, I said no one has stood up and said, okay, this is our fault. Now, in this incident, obviously it's an accident. No one would have caused it. The mental aspect of let's go and put someone in a dangerous situation wasn't there. But no one has, and it's very surprising, it's very upsetting, and it's very makes it angry to think that even at the next race, obviously in Russia, 14, and then obviously the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2015, when we found out that Jules had died, in that space, so they had plenty of time to come out and say something, at least something. JT, they didn't even mention his name, and that's the thing. We mentioned his name. The fans, the people around the world mentioned his name, the commentators, more than anyone like Charlie Whiting, Bernie Ecclestone, and it does get you annoyed, because you think, well, why haven't they taken any responsibility for what's happened? They haven't mentioned his name. All they've said is that, we're just going to mourn his death. We're just going to, just be sad for Formula One. It's a terrible time, and we're going to improve safety for future. And that's what we want to hear. We want to hear that they're improving for future, but we want to hear that partially. But the other part we want to hear is that they actually feel a bit of guilt for Jules' death. Like you would if you went out and killed someone. You'd feel guilt. Sorry, that's a bit too extreme. Maybe if you just saw someone die or be in a dangerous situation or pass away, you would feel guilt, even if it wasn't your total fault, or even if it wasn't your fault at all. You'd feel a bit of guilt. They haven't, and it really annoys you to that. And again, it links back to a bit of like Hillsborough, because obviously South Yorkshire Police. I mean, they even decided on the night that it wasn't their fault. But it's almost like that. It's almost like after the crash happened, where the FIA is sitting there and going, "Well, that's not our fault. It's Jules' fault, or it's Marusha's fault. It's poor Graham Loudon's fault, who was probably sitting at home in his house in London, now watching the F1 debate show, thinking, well, hang on a minute, this isn't my fault, and I've got loads of mail and loads of phone calls and all that saying that this is my fault or I'm involved." And I'm like, well, no, it's not. I'm a very, very, very small piece of the whole puzzle, which is Formula One. And obviously Jules wasn't in the puzzle. He's just kind of, hung out to dry. That's what all Formula 1 drivers are. They're hung out to dry. They're interchangeable light bulbs, as Martin Brundle said. They're just, kicked around. So, he doesn't have any part of this. Maybe Russia doesn't. It's the FIA, and something needs to be done. Something needs to be said. It's too late, maybe even something needs to be said. But this case will prove something. And I hope it does. I hope it brings justice to his family, and proves that he was unlawfully killed. It might not be that words, but it will be. It'll be like almost Jules was put into a dangerous situation by the FIA, and they need to say something. They need to show that they actually feel a bit of guilt, that they could have prevented Jules' death, because at the moment they're not. So as I say, we will know, down the line what will actually happen about him. From possibly the Canadian Grand Prix, and then obviously through the year. I mean, there will definitely be questions about the media and the pundits will hand the FIA and the FOM about it, about this injury. Now, obviously, safety is getting improved. They've been talking about it, but after Russia 14 onwards, I mean, wasn't that too late? It was, because a race earlier, someone, crashed, went into a coma, and they didn't know it yet, but obviously this person would pass away from his injury sustained, in that race with no safety around. And talking about new safety will improve the racing at the moment, but it'll never bring Jules back, and that's obviously a real shame for everyone involved.
Exactly, it's an absolutely horrible thing to even talk about. I mean, I hope Jules' family gets the justice they deserve. As like you said, nothing will be able to bring Jules back. I mean, it's absolutely tragic that we've had to have something bad like this happen to actually make a change, to improve safety and stuff like that. So it is wrong, and people in the FIA and stuff, and all the board members, are all cowards at the end of the day. And I'm saying that now, they are all cowards. Yeah. So in the wake of Jules Bianchi's crash, immediately everyone started talking about cockpit protection and stuff, which has been an absolutely big topic throughout the entire, for probably since Felipe Massa's crash, I would probably say, when the spring hit him. And obviously it has caused massive stir throughout the entire paddock about, the cars won't look as good, the cars won't, be as aerodynamic, what they're gonna look like. So roll on to 2016 in the pre-season test. Ferrari, or Kimi Räikkönen, tested this Halo cockpit design. Basically, it looks like a bit of a flip-flop or a thong, or whatever you want to call it, some weird, stupid name. And pretty much everybody looked at it and went, "Oh, that is absolutely horrible." I mean, what kind of person thought of this? You know what I mean? And nobody liked it. All the pundits said they didn't like it. All the fans said they didn't like it. Even Lewis Hamilton said he didn't like it. And he said, if you have the option to run it, I'm not going to use it. Well, I'm kind of sorry, Lewis, but apparently I think you are going to use it in 2017. That's what is going to happen. And also move forward into Russia 2016. FP1, Daniel Ricciardo tests out this aero screen, which looks a bit better and looks, more professional than the Halo cockpit design. But the problem with that is that it's too heavy, it's not aerodynamic enough, and it's going to take longer for the teams to develop it. So what the FIA, what Formula 1 has came out and said, is that the Halo cockpit design is going to be used in the 2017 season, because that is the easiest and more flexible design to go with for now in terms of safety for the cockpit. But they have not ruled out Red Bull's design to be used for the 2018 season onwards. Now, in my opinion, I would prefer the Red Bull design. It looks better. It looks more professional. I will be able to live with that. I will still be able to watch Formula 1. But if you got the Halo cockpit design, I think it's an absolute joke. And what brought it to my attention was, if you look at the Monaco Grand Prix that's just happened now in FP1, Nico Rosberg ran over a drain cover which came loose, and it bounced up on the track, and it hit Jenson Button's front wing. Now, what people were saying was that Jenson had a lucky escape, because if that had been higher, it would have hit him in the helmet, and obviously would have caused some really bad damage, similar like what Felipe Massa suffered in Hungary 2009. So what we've got to be thinking of was, right, if the cockpit designs, like the Halo cockpit design, was introduced for 2016 season, would have that prevented that drain cover hitting Jensen's button? And the answer is no, because there's a massive gap in the way. It's only got a thin line here and a thin line there to stop anything coming, like tyres or springs or anything big in terms of coming towards the cockpit. But anything small like that, yes, it might not cause enough damage, but still that could cause him some serious injury and put danger to everybody else, not only to him. I mean, what happens if it bounces up, ricochets, and goes up into the crowd? Is that not a possibility? I mean, obviously, yes, you got the barriers and stuff, but not. I mean, how high will it ricochet? You know what I mean? Come straight back down. Obviously, it is a heavy thing as well, so it'll fall like a bag of stones. And that's what brought up this debate. Once again in the paddock, would have the Halo cockpit design prevented this? The aero screen wouldn't have. It would have prevented him hitting Jensen's head. So I believe that the future looks like the aero screen will come into play at some point. But also remember, next season, the rules change in terms of what the cars will look like, aerodynamics. The tyres will be wider as well, which look awesome, by the way. If you haven't seen them already, they look absolutely tremendous. Well done, Pirelli, for that. You're going to get a round of applause for that. And I mean, so obviously the team's got to work around that as well. So, Elsie, I mean, what's your overall opinion on this? I mean, do you think the future lies with the aero screen, or do you think maybe the teams will, take the easy option out and go with the Halo cockpit design for future seasons?
Just as you said before, JT, about the being light and stuff like that. Now, the aero screen, does show to protect a lot more, but obviously, as I say, it's heavy and it might, it's not favoured by the teams. Just for the example, obviously, that you used in FP1, that Jensen, almost getting hit by the drain cover. I think Fernando Alonso, his teammate at McLaren, did point that out, that the Jensen, if he had obviously he didn't get hit, but if he did, I mean, if he had those protections that they would have helped, that they are needed. That was probably the best example for when there would be need. Obviously, for example, when we saw in Australia, Fernando's flip and then Kimi's fire, two examples of when they wouldn't be, because they'd restrict accessibility of the cockpit. Obviously, it would slow Kimi's exit out, and when it's fire, it's crucial. I don't think the teams need to get over the fact that it might be heavy or whatever. It was driver safety. I mean, that's one of the number one things in Formula 1 at the moment. Cars might not be as powerful as they were back in the day, but obviously, and there's no refueling, so if anything, there's not going to be fire. They are restricting safety, and they have over the years, but driver safety is incredibly important. I do like the aero screen. I think that would help a lot more. I mean, Formula 1's never going to be. Formula 1 is going to change. They're definitely going to make two. There's two cards on the table that Formula 1 will play. The third option is to walk away from the table, and keep the design that they have at the moment, which is no cockpit protection apart from the helmet. And I don't think they're going to keep that. The Halo cockpit isn't my favourite. I do like the aero screen. I like to see that return, but the Halo cockpit, I mean, it will take some getting used to. Maybe winter testing wasn't the best, because obviously they only tested it one day on one drive on one car, and that's not maybe the best reason. Maybe the next test, which I think is in Silverstone, just after the British Grand Prix, maybe they run all the cars for the 2 days that it's run. I think it's 2 or 3 days. I'm sure it's 2. If I'm wrong, please correct us. So for 2 days, run it on every single car. Every single driver uses it. Obviously, they'll be using third drives and whatever. So everyone using it, and then see what they're like. If they like it, if the drivers like it, we'll like it as fans. We do whatever the drivers tell us, and then you know what I mean. Then Bob's your uncle, JT. If the drivers like it, that's my advice. If the FIA are watching the F1 debate, which obviously there will be,
obviously
run it when you go to Silverstone in the in-season testing. Run it for those 2 days on all the cars, not just one, on all the cars, and then if they do that and everyone's happy, then that'll happen, and then we'll get used to it, JT.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, get everyone's feedback on it. Obviously run it from like the start to finish, or maybe if they have 2 days, maybe either run with it one day, then without it the next, or maybe use Red Bull's aero design first, then use the Halo cockpit design, then again give them more feedback. But obviously, maybe get a redesigned one, perhaps maybe not for this season, but if they're going to have it for 2018, then I'm sure we'll probably see it in FP1 or maybe some practice and testing sessions next season. You know what I mean? So maybe a better aerodynamic one. But the one problem that everyone has said about this, the Red Bull's aero screen, is that what happens obviously with rain. I mean, how will that dispense with the visibility and stuff. I would imagine that they'll have some sort of fabric on it that would, get the rain off it easily when they're going at like, such high speeds. That's what I would think. But maybe they haven't come to that decision yet. Maybe they're just trying to. Maybe this is just a quick concept design so far. Then maybe they'll try and think of that, as like I said, next season or whenever. So that's the only problem with that.
Can I say one point, JT?
Yeah, I've got
and this is for the aero screen and also for the Halo cockpit. Now, the biggest problem, I think, is the driver accessibility. Now, I do remember, and I've always kept mentioning that Martin Brundle is obviously he's amazing as he was as a driver, is a great tester of cars and all that. And he said that to get your super license, you have to do a test in a Formula 1 car where you have to exit the car within 5 seconds and then replace the steering wheel, like parc fermé, within a further 5. Now, I remember when we did the aero screen. We did. Red Bull did.
We didn't.
Yeah, we did. In the aero screen in association with the Red Bull F1 debate show. When they did that, they had a picture of Daniel Ricciardo getting in the car. Now, in parc fermé, JT, when a driver wins a race, as you know, it's hard. They have to kind of lift themselves up the seat. They undo the seatbelt. They remove that thing, whatever that is, like the
it's like a headrest type of thing. So it's more comfortable.
Take everything out, remove the steering wheel, get out, put it back in, and then celebrate. So that takes about, another 20 seconds.
Yeah.
But then they've also got it, for the Halo cockpit, they've got to climb through this hoop, almost like when you're at the park, obviously as a child, which I'm sure everyone's done. You climb within those monkey bars or whatever, and then you try to climb out. And then also with the aero screen, we saw Daniel Ricciardo, he had an extra layer to climb into. So driver accessibility is going to take a lot longer. And then when you factor that in, is that when fires occur in the cars, how is that? Fire is, if you're flipped upside down, obviously if you're upside down, that's going to be hard to get out, but nothing else is going to happen. But if it's a fire, which we have seen, for example, obviously this season, Kimi Räikkönen in the pit lane in Australia, we had obviously Seb, his engine blew out in Bahrain. We've had a few more, JT. Obviously we've had a few more in the season where there's been Nico Nico Hulkenberg in Spain. Just where obviously fire, and obviously as you know, fire spreads and all that. And if the restriction to the cockpit of getting out, and that's another topic of driver safety. That's something to get your head around, and that's something that the FIA need to improve on. Just as I said about fog, JT, with the aero screen, and they might work on that. Well, that's another thing they've got to work on. Driver, the accessibility of the cockpit and how fast they can do it in, because see, every second matters when it comes to fire and something like that. That could spread and obviously injure drivers in the cockpit.
Exactly, mate. They've got a lot of work on, but I'm sure that hopefully they'll come to some sort of conclusion, and maybe Jules Bianchi should be the last death in a Formula 1 weekend.
Yes,
we hope, anyways.
Should be. Well, people said that about Senna, and
exactly.
We were doing well, through the early 2000s, and I was going to say through the early 2000s, drivers like Michael Schumacher, Fernando Alonso, as you know, all them probably didn't even think death was on the table. The risk, the lies, but they didn't even think death was occurring, and I didn't. I never thought death would occur ever.
Nobody did.
Every single time after Jules had crashed in his coma, every single day I was saying, no, that's never going to happen. And once he did, I remember the day that I found out that he died. I came upstairs just to check the computer because it was a year anniversary of when I went away in 2014, and I opened my computer, and obviously there's some stupid, sick people out there who say false things like Jules are dead. People have died. I remember there was things about Michael, after it happened to sick people. But then this was on Sky Sports, and I just opened the computer, went onto Facebook, and the first banner, Jules Bianchi dies aged 25, I want to say. JT, is that
25,
right?
yeah, 25.
And then, I was like, shock. But anyway, that was when I found out, and I've lost my train of thought. I was talking about Senna, yeah. Obviously, 20 years since Senna, but yeah, as JT said, that's Jules will be the last death.
Yes, it will be. It will be, and if not FIA, we're coming to find you.
Yes,
mean it, because this should prevent any sort of death in Formula 1, unless the car blows up. Then you can't prevent that. But apart from that, this should be the final, the nail in the coffin from death in Formula 1. Jules Bianchi should be the last death in Formula 1, which sounds pretty bad, but in a way it sounds good, because that means, right, we'll never experience it ever again. So that's the end of that then.
So obviously they were our big topics, or the big topics of this week anyway. As I say, obviously tune in to find out what happens with the Jules Bianchi law case. We're going to keep you entertained on that. Up to date, I meant to say. I don't know why I said entertained. Up to date. and then also with the Halo cockpit. Other
Yeah.
news in Formula One at the moment: the ultra soft tyres. Now we'll move on quickly to this because we mentioned it in the Monaco Grand Prix review. They didn't go down, but they weren't used at the start of the race, midway through, and they didn't have the reception that they wanted because obviously it was a rainy race and stuff like that. But they have been confirmed for Singapore, along with God, I can't remember, Canada, Baku, and Singapore, and then there'll be other races such as Abu Dhabi, possibly Japan. I knew Suzuka was mentioned in there, possibly Brazil. It's about the one, but the ultra soft tyre is definitely making an impact in Formula One. And it's great to see, isn't it, JT? How did you? It wasn't the best, and it wasn't the best reception from them because, as I say, the Pirelli's plan was probably for them to be seen at the start of the race and things like that. But how did you think they impressed at Monaco? The first ever sighting we had, or the first race sighting we had, because they were used in pre-season, but the first race sighting we ever had of the Purtle Mark tyre.
I mean, what we saw in qualifying was actually a proper first impact of what the ultra soft tyres could do, and I was really, really excited. But Daniel Ricciardo kind of proved that, that you don't need the ultra soft tyres to actually get an advantage, because he went on the super soft tyres and he did pretty well in qualifying. Obviously, he got pole position, so that just proves that the super soft tyres are just as good as the ultra softs. Even Lewis Hamilton said that you can't feel an advantage over this. And what Pirelli was saying is that the stuff that they make these tyres with, all the elements or what have you, that from the super soft tyres to the ultra soft tyres, they're very, very similar in a way. It's just that the ultra soft tyres are made obviously with a softer compound and softer, whatever they do to make tyres, rubber and stuff. Softer rubber, that's what I meant to say. And obviously coming into the race, obviously it would have been cold. It would have been, obviously not as cold as what you would expect in other countries, but obviously with it being rain, overcast and stuff at the start of the race, it would have been freezing cold. The ground would have been as warm as what it was in qualifying, so it took some time to get the ultra soft tyres into gear. But when they did, actually did make a little bit of impact, which can push Lewis Hamilton to win the race, push some drivers up the grid as well. But I mean, at the same time, the softs and the super soft tyres still made their impacts to go to the long run and get even more advantage. So really, it was pretty much like, right, pick your tyres, all of them are going to work just as well. And by the way, here's some stat attacks for you: that the Monaco Grand Prix was the first race to have 5 compound tyres ran in one race.
Wow.
Obviously, you had the ultra soft tyres ran, the super softs ran, the softs were ran in the race. Obviously, the intermediates and the full wet. 5 tyres in one race.
Wow.
Now that's a stat attack for you. So there you go. Any pub quizzes come up, tell them, JT and LC. We told you.
Get on that, JT. Well done.
Exactly.
Red Bull and Toro Rosso have signed a 2-year deal with Renault. Now, obviously, as you know, Red Bull were with Renault, or Tag Heuer. For people that didn't know, Tag Heuer is Renault. It's just like, the watch companies. What's going on here? Anyway, so Renault obviously supply 2 teams at the moment, Renault and Red Bull. The Renault, the yellow team with K-Mag and Palmer in, and they obviously will be running Renault Power, of course. Red Bull will use Renault Power for 2017 and 2018.
Yes.
Now, 2014. Okay, I'll start early. As you know, they won the 4 World Championships and 4 Constructors Championships under Renault Power. 2014, Renault couldn't care less. It's like they didn't pay enough money or enough time or enough attention into the power unit. Red Bull criticised them so much in 14. 15 came along, and then all this criticism came. Terrible. They almost forced Renault to buy their own team. So that's a little history about that. But then obviously they've improved dramatically over the winter with their own car, with their own power. Obviously for Renault, for the team Renault. As we even saw that from Daniel Kvyat's podium in China. Daniel Kvyat, JT, who's that?
Daniel Kvyat, wasn't he the guy who did well at Red Bull but then got demoted to Toro Rosso?
He was with Red Bull. Never. Are you serious?
I'm being serious.
Is that right?
That is right.
No, that's not right. I'm not somewhere else. That's never.
Hello, Helmut Marko. Yes, this is JT. Yes, we're just doing their fun debate. Yes, I know you'll be watching it. Thank you very much. Please subscribe. We need to ask you. Did Danny Kvyat actually drive for Red Bull? He did. Well, there you go. Are you gonna go? All right. Fish and chips. Enjoy that. Right. See you later. Bye.
Fish and chips. Well,
he's having fish and chips.
Wow. What did he say, JT?
I asked him. I rang him up and I was like, Danny Kivat did drive for Red Bull. He's like, yes, of course he did, JT. But obviously now he's at Toro Rosso and stuff. And by the way, I love the F1 debate show. Are you recording? I was like, yes, we're recording stuff.
Wow.
I was like, subscribe. He's like, yes, I'm subscribed. Good lad.
He's our guys. He is another Star Attack. He is our first live caller. So well done, mate.
There we go. Helmut Marko.
Live caller.
I would have engineer of the day award, but you know I'm limited on football trophies. I mean F1 debate trophies. So,
so back on topic.
Yes.
So they have improved with Daniel Kvyat, who apparently was at Red Bull, which I didn't know about. And in China, and then obviously, of course, Max Verstappen winning in Spain. Daniel Ricciardo's podium in Monaco. Those three massive things made Red Bull, the power unit, massive. Forget the pit stop incident. That was Red Bull. That was their fault. Obviously, Renault have done their job to improve. Yeah. Toro Rosso, their feeder team, are running Ferrari engines for the rest of this year, with Carlos Sainz and JT. This guy can't be in two places at once. It's Daniel Kvyat again.
Danny Kivat. Oh, we just mentioned him before about Red Bull, but is he a Red Bull anymore? Nah, Helmut Marko confirmed.
I think he's he's like omnipresent. He's just everywhere.
Exactly. Danny Kivat's everywhere.
So Toro Rosso were running Renault. They went back to Ferrari because they had enough, and now they're back to Renault because Red Bull are there.
They can't make up the mind. It's like an ex. It's like right. It's like your girlfriend, right? Or a boyfriend. I'm gonna go to you. Nah, you're not working. Oh, I'm gonna go to you. No, we're not working. I'm gonna go back to you because I remember the good old times we used to have. No. I'm gonna go back. And it's just like Toro Rosso, make up your freaking mind.
Yeah, but they have at the moment, and obviously for the rest of 2016 they'll run Ferrari. 2017, 2018, along with all the new regulations, they will run Renault, and there will be happy families with Red Bull again.
So that means Toro Rosso and Red Bull are going that way on the grid, not that way.
Forward. Renault can do whatever they want. Renault should come forward, and Renault will hopefully, JT, return to the dominance of being the dominant engine and the dominant engine supplier, which they were with obviously Seb and like the early. Like 2010 and onwards, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day. Back in the day of good old Renault. But speaking of Renault, and speaking of one in particular man, to finish off this episode,
is this a horror story?
This is worse than a horror story. This shouldn't even be told. Right, we are rating this video 18. No, 21. 21.
I don't want to know.
That doesn't even exist because
I don't want to know.
King Pasta Maldonado, or King Pasta Cristiano, shall I say? Is apparently making a return in 2017. Now, as we all know, he was with Lotus last season, who transformed into Renault. His backers didn't really agree with the terms Renault set. They dropped in, replacing it with Kevin Magnussen. And obviously, he's been sitting out this season. I don't know what he's been doing a little bit of testing with Pirelli. From what I'm hearing,
it's been crashing
live. He crashed a few times, but you know that's Pasta Maldonado. That's Pasta Maldonado away. And there has been. He said he's been in contact with a number of teams. Now, I doubt he'll go back to Renault because of his backers. The team I can see him going to is Sauber. Now, the reason why it was Sauber because Sauber are
crashing.
Exactly. Sauber are in a massive financial mess right now. So the only way to improve their financial status, shall I say, is to employ somebody who literally uses 10 front wings every weekend. So it costs them even more money. So that's a good. Well done, Sauber. Well done. No, I'm only joking. Reason being, I would suggest why Pasta Maldonado will go to Sauber was because he's got a very, very healthy financial backend.
Yeah.
As does Marcus Ericsson, because obviously Marcus Ericsson was at Caterham. It's not very often you hear someone from Caterham move other teams, or you know, when HRT and Virgin were around back in the day, there was very, very few that would actually have a second season with the same or a different team.
Yeah.
Like Charles Piquet or Van der Gaard, they stayed. Did he? Oh yeah, he did. And obviously Marcus Ericsson, he's been in for a couple of seasons now. So he's got to get a healthy financial basket. I would believe that would draw Felipe Nasr and allow Pasta Maldonado to come in and obviously hopefully secure a Sauber's status. So yeah, we could see Pasta Maldonado back in 2017.
And that is a scary thought.
Oh my god.
That is a horror story.
That is a horror story.
But
exactly.
By the way, guys, never forget, Pasta has won a race. So from all the rubbish ripping we do, remember he has won a race.
How many races has he won? One.
Well, mate, it's better than a lot of other drivers on the grid. Marcus Ericsson, nil. Roman Grosjean, nil. Gutierrez, nil. Nasr, nil. It's better than many people on there. So
exactly. Look at the positive side, you Maldonado haters. He's won a race.
Boo you, all the haters of Maldonado.
Well, just the button won a race. Exactly.
So we'll leave you with that thought. On the channel, By the way, we were going to put this out on Wednesday, as JT mentioned in the channel update, but we decided we're now going to move this episode to Saturday, and then also what he mentioned for the foreseeable future. So every episode will be on the Saturday, which means that next week, which is the Canadian Grand Prix, you will have an F1 Decode episode on the Friday, the F1 Debate Show on Saturday, which we will be discussing all 3 practice sessions and qualifying, which obviously, because we are in the UK, will be happening quite late on, so almost as soon as we...
Oh, it's a later race this week, obviously for the Canadian Grand Prix. Yes, I forgot about that.
So,
thank you for that, LT.
And then we will try and get one out on the night. It is 7 o'clock, like our time, on the Sunday, but I'm sure we will get one out. So we'll have a weekend full. On the channel, we had the F1 Decoded episode 7, which was the Battle of the Aussies, in my best Australian accent. So please catch that if you haven't watched it already. And then also catch us for action-packed next week, which includes the F1 Debate Show, episode 8 of F1 Decoded, which is another battle of the British drivers of John Surtees and Jackie Stewart, and then the Canadian Grand Prix preview, and then obviously the race weekend, and then the review on Sunday. So thank you very much for watching this episode, guys, and we will see you in the next episode.
So, guys, don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and we'll see you in the next video.
Oh yes, of course, like and subscribe and comment anything you want to say.
Exactly. Comment anything if you want.